This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill, who this past Saturday night at UFC 283 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, claimed for himself the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship by defeating Glover Teixeira by a unanimous decision. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What was your take of Jamahal Hill's championship glory here?
First of all, I think you say Brazil better than Brazilians say Brazil.
Thank you. Extra Brazilian.
Yeah, what an event this was, and what a story this main event was. I mean, this thing was everything. I loved every moment of this fight, every aspect of the story of this fight, straight through to the end. I loved it all. The way Jamahal Hill showed up for this fight was special to me. Like, this is a guy who, let's be honest, was unproven at this level. Like, yes, he finished Thiago Santos, but Santos hadn't looked good in a bit. He finished Johnny Walker, but he's Johnny Walker, and we kind of know how that goes. He finished Jimmy Crute. We'll see what Crute ends up being. Beyond those three things, he really hadn't proven so much, especially at this upper level of the division, which he has yet to hit. And don't forget, he got finished by Paul Craig, a guy who a lot of these other contenders have beat. So there was really no reason to assume he could hang with Glover Teixeira over 25 minutes. And I had those same doubts too, which is why I ended up taking Glover. And yeah, of course, you could have picked Hill by first round KO or something like that. That's one thing. Of course, that was a live. Yeah, right. That's what Omar picked. That was a live chance because we know Glover gets hit, and if one lands big, who knows? So you want to pick that, you could. But to see Jamahal Hill come in and fight the way he did and deal with Glover not going away and being a zombie and stuffing Glover's takedowns and even escaping bad positions when he did get stuck on bottom and going all 25 minutes hard, that is a performance that will stick with me for a while. He shut up any doubt there is about him, and he is the man right now. And there were a couple times, even as I'm watching Hill look as good as he's looking, I think the first time was in the second round, I want to say, and then the second time was in the fifth round, where Glover gets on top. And I'm like, oh, man, like, this performance was all for nothing because he's going to get tapped because Glover's that good. And nope, never even close. Like, next thing you know, Jamahal Hill is out, and he's free and clear. And he was just unbelievable. So with all these improvements that he's made in his wrestling and his grappling, he may not be any stopgap champion. He may be the real deal. And, like, okay, is Magomed Ankalaev trying to take you down different than Glover taking you down? Yeah, of course. And is striking with Yuri different than striking with Glover? Yeah. But if you want to believe in Jamahal Hill, he has given you every reason to do exactly that, because the improvements that he is making from fight to fight, especially with his defensive wrestling and grappling, are wild. And then just to switch gears for a second, props to Glover for being an absolute warrior. I mean, there's not an ounce of quit in that man's body. I love Jamahal Hill's post-fight quote where he was talking about who was the ref? Goddard? Now I'm blanking.
I think it was Goddard. Yeah.
Whoever it was. He was talking about the ref in different moments kept telling Glover to fight back. And then in Hill's head, he was like, motherfucker, he is. He hasn't stopped fighting back this whole time. Like, I thought that was such a perfect quote to summarize that fight. But, that was the truth about Glover. What a career he's had, which we'll get to in a moment.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was just incredible the whole way through from Hill, even to the end. I loved after he won, it took about 30 seconds, and then you saw it hit him when he realized he was about to be champion because, of course, he knew he had the cards. And his corner comes in the cage, and he can't even stand, and they're holding him up as he's breaking down because his legs just weren't working anymore. And then into the whole interview where he's crying and then kind of gets defiant and rises to his feet and everything. It was just the whole thing was a moment, and props to Jamahal Hill for the arrival that he just had.
Omar, let's bring you in here. Give us your reaction to this Jamahal Hill moment, taking the light heavyweight title in dominant fashion over the veteran Glover Teixeira.
You guys know I've been on the Jamahal Hill train for a while now, and it's always great to see somebody work their way to a legitimate title, right? This was not, I mean, the man had basically finished everybody on the way up. Everybody. Everybody said he couldn't do it. Everybody said Thiago Santos was going to smash him, that he wasn't ready. He wasn't at that level. Look at this guy. You can tell, look at Santos, look at Jamahal Hill. Like, seriously, who's going to win? And every time he keeps shutting people up and shutting people up. And the fact is, this fight, I think the real reason why I love this fight, the Santos fight was still a grueling fight, but this one, he was in real danger, I thought, he could have been in real danger in a lot of certain situations with Glover, and he just really wasn't. And it was kind of fantastic to see that at every turn, he was the one kind of getting the advantage, the one going on top, the one never stopping. That fucking pace that he put on at 205 is ridiculous. It would be ridiculous in a lot of weight classes. That weight, that the left head kick that he continued to find, the left head kick from the southpaw position specifically. So it was a power left head kick. I mean, he saw the opening. He kept going for it. I was terrified that Glover was going to break his forearm because he kept blocking it with one arm and not two. And I was just waiting for this man to just Chuck Liddell it.
I started to think it too.
Oh, it was freaking me out, man, because he got hit with, what, 6 of them? 7 of them?
Yeah,
maybe more?
Spamming it at one point.
He wasn't really blocking them. He got rocked at least twice by the head kicks. Yep. But Glover Teixeira is an absolute animal. An absolute animal. Probably, and I think he said it the best himself after the fight was over, he's too tough for his own good. None of what happened in that cage was healthy for him by any stretch of the imagination. But like even more so than I feel like a regular just being in a fight. I mean, he got all kinds of battered in his face. He got a lot of knees thrown, a lot of body shots. I loved the knees from Jamahal Hill. People do not utilize knees enough in MMA, and I'm not really sure why. Maybe they're scared of the takedown with them being on one leg like a flamingo. But knees need to get used a lot more, man, because they will ruin somebody. That a proper knee, and I can tell you right now, for those of you, I guess nobody fucking listen. I have video of this man who trains us, one of the coaches, kneeing me for real with a pad on. My fucking spine feels that. My soul feels that when it comes back. It's the absolute worst. A real knee, I'm assuming without a pad, is probably going to fuck somebody's day up. I just think it needs to be utilized a lot more. Long story short, Jamahal Hill was absolutely fucking fantastic. It was one of those performances where you expect somebody to rise to the occasion. It kind of reminded me of the TJ Hendon Barao moment when he first came on. No one really thought TJ was going to win that fight against somebody who was like 33-0, 30, whatever the hell he was at the time. And he absolutely smashed Barao. Like, he absolutely ruined him. Granted, now we have little asterisks everywhere about what that really means. What was he, Regardless, the performance itself was absolutely fantastic. Then Jamahal Hill made a statement with this one. I'm actually super excited to see what the light heavyweight division has now at this point. And I think that's what they needed more than anything.
Let me ask you a quick question. As someone who picked Jamahal Hill on this show last week, and actually I think Mike did too in the end. He said against his better judgment he was taking Hill, right? Yeah. So I'll ask it to both of you. And Mike, I know you still got to jump in with your take here.
Yep.
If I told you the fight was going 25 minutes, what percentage chance would you have given Jamahal Hill? Would you have considered that he could win the cards?
Yeah.
Like if you shook a magic 8-ball and the only thing it spit out was the fight goes the distance.
Right.
Then you'd be like, oh, well, shit. You would
like,
think that you'd say that your percentage of Glover must go up.
Right? That's what I'm curious about. Would you Omar, if you knew it was going the full 25, would you have picked Hill?
Yeah, I still would have picked him.
Wow. Good for you.
I still would have picked him.
I don't know if I would have. I honestly
in my mind, it had to be first or second round finish for Hill.
My thing too was that Santos fight I thought was great for everybody to watch because he went 4 rounds with him before he finished him, and the reason why I think he got to that point was he fucking drowned Santos. That became a war of attrition. The pace he put on in that fight too was fucking dumb, and he did pretty much the same thing in the Glover fight. So I definitely would have picked him because it seems like he can sustain it. I don't know
Yeah,
how, but
it's not that I was worried about his cardio necessarily. I just thought if he wasn't putting Glover away early, that meant Glover could deal with what was coming at him, and that meant Glover would take the fight over. Like, that was kind of how I was viewing it. And obviously that is not what happened.
I mean, to be fair, man, I thought Glover was going to go a few times, and
Yeah, man. The head kicks were a great adjustment because they said this on the broadcast. You didn't have volume, right? You were in
it sounds like shit in there.
But they pointed this out, and it's a great point, because Glover was not always so great at taking punches. And later in his career, he has evolved into a guy who you're like, how the fuck is he eating all these? And it's because he has become so good at rolling with punches. He very subtly rolls with so many shots. So, yeah, he's getting hit, but he's not getting hit as flush as he could be. So the adjustment from Hill to switch to that head kick, which you ain't rolling with the left head kick, was a great switch from Hill, and it kind of changed the fight from that point forward.
You're right, it did. It absolutely did. The thing that I was most struck by from Jamahal Hill was this sense of, like, peace almost, this sense of calm that he had from the moment he walked out. And that's kind of what I thought could happen last week when I picked him. From last week's show, I think I said something like, I'm picking him because I just feel like it's his moment.
Yeah,
and I think he feels that way. I think he felt that way. And in a sense, he proved that right on Saturday night. I don't know the last time I saw a guy so zenned out going into a title fight.
Yeah.
His first title fight. And like in so many spots, this could have been a situation where he froze because of the pressure of the moment. His first UFC title fight after only how many few fights in the UFC?
In Rio.
In Rio, an enemy
You're
territory.
going to die chance.
Bro, did you see? I'm going to tell you right now, speaking of that, a shout out to the wife of the man in the stands who started flipping off Jamahal Hill and telling him he was going to die, like, to his fucking face.
What?
Because she saved his life. Jamahal Hill stopped and turned around like he was about to jump over those stands and take that man's life before he went into that octagon.
I missed that.
Yeah, I missed this. I remember you texted it, but I missed
That
it.
woman saved his life. She came over and was like, nope, 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 and she pulled it back. It was fantastic. Good for her. Saved her husband's life.
But yeah, man, going back to last week, there was so much doubt because of the skill set of Glover Teixeira and the unproven ground skills compared to Glover's of Jamahal Hill. But my God, this guy leveled up just in time to have the best night of his fucking career. I mean, and for Glover's part, on the one hand, he kind of goes out on a sour note because his last fight, he kind of got the shit kicked out of him. But on the other hand, like, there's a completely different and opposite, like, interpretation of his last fight. It's like, what a fucking warrior is this man. In spite of all of it, 43 years old, this guy never quit. He easily could have, in the second round, definitely in the third round, I think in the fourth round also, he could have taken some of these huge shots and turtled up and just basically said, that's it. And he didn't, man. Yeah. He didn't.
Bro, he was in mount in the fifth round. Like, he never stopped. He had a shot to pull that off in the fifth.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if Jamahal Hill wasn't on his P's and Q's for the entirety of that fight, he would have gotten fucked up at some point because he did end up in some bad positions at some point. He just never let them get to a point where he couldn't come back from them.
Yeah. And
I
ate some
actually
shots too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Every time
did.
I was like, ooh, this might be getting close to being stopped, Hill would get wailed on in the face, and I'd be like, oh, shit, I guess not. Like, It happened a lot. But the last quote from Glover in the cage, I felt like was a perfect synopsis of Glover Teixeira. To have just gone through that war, shown the absolute warrior that he is, to use war again, and then to get on a mic and be, as you're retiring, in your moment, where half the fucking stadium left, by the way, which I'm going to get to in a minute, and say, what I'm going to say right now is that I'm going to put my arm around Jamahal Hill and say that the last guy that walked out of here that won, being Brandon Moreno, I saw you guys throwing drinks and trash and shit at him. And we're not doing that to Jamahal Hill because I'm going to walk out here arm in arm with him and you guys show him respect. That's Glover Teixeira. And that was an awesome way for him to walk out of the cage.
Amen, man. All right. Well, let's save Glover's retirement. But first, let's get to Jamahal Hill and talk about what is next for him. Just a recap for those who might be unfamiliar of the logjam that has been the light heavyweight division. So, remember that Glover was originally supposed to, I believe, headline UFC 282 in a rematch against Yuri Prochazka. But Prochazka had to pull out due to a devastating apparent shoulder injury that required some kind of surgery, and apparently he's going to be out from 6 to 12 months. Glover apparently refused a replacement fight against Magomed Ankalaev, which prompted the UFC to change the original bout between former champion Jan Blachowicz and Ankalaev into the new title fight for the vacant belt. And that ended in a split draw. And then Dana got on the mic right away at that post-fight presser and said it's going to be Glover against Jamahal Hill for the title now. And I think Hill was supposed to be going up against Anthony Smith in March. So Smith lost his opponent. He was a little miffed about that. And then they made Smith the on-deck replacement fighter for this event. And then he fucking missed weight. So it's just like the 205-pound division, man, at the top. Jamahal Hill has the crown now, but there's like 4 other guys who are all like reaching right there for it. So, Mark, let me start with you. Who do you think should be the rightful next title challenger for the 205 belt?
So first off, I think that this win helped a bit in terms of the division feeling a little straightened out, simply because Glover was beaten for the belt. I get it that Yuri was not beaten, but at least Glover was the champ. He had a war for the ages with Yuri that could have gone either way that Yuri stole right at the end of the fight. Yuri gets hurt. It kind of feels like, all right, if Yuri's not here, the champ is still Glover. Right. So I kind of like that the champ didn't get crowned from some random Blachowicz-Ankalaev matchup. I like that it got crowned by someone beating Glover. So I feel like Hill can say, other than the Yuri point, that he is the rightful champ right now, certainly over Jan or Ankalaev, even though they may want to say, oh, he skipped to this point. Like, it doesn't matter because he just beat Glover's chair. That's kind of how I look at that. In terms of what he's going to do next, the names we've just said are the names. We're seeing already on social media Yuri Prochazka putting his little video out saying, I'm coming. Jamahal Hill putting his response video out mocking it, which was hilarious if you haven't seen it. Look, if Yuri's going to come back a lot sooner than expected, originally it was he's going to be out over a year. Then it changed to like, oh, maybe he could be back October. Now they're suddenly saying he could be back like July. So this injury was not as bad as people made it out to be. He should have probably kept the fucking belt. But if he really is going to be back by like July, sure. Maybe we just wait and that's the fight. And Jamahal Hill kind of said the same thing, and I think he actually put that deadline on it. He was like, if he's not back by then we got to move on. Mm-hmm. So if he's going to be, I'm down. If not, my guess is maybe they go Ankalaev before they go Jan, or we just rebook that fight like soon and let someone win it and then be ready to fight Hill. But I think it's going to hinge on how fast Yuri's healing, which makes me feel like we might as well go ahead and book Jan Magomed again. That way we at least have someone ready to go if Yuri's not going to be back.
Omar, any other thoughts on the 205 title picture?
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction was to get Ankalaev in there. I didn't really consider Yuri until he says he's really ready to be back. It's all, it's all well and good, but we've always seen a lot of these surgeries not really take the way that they're expected to. Maybe it's going better for him. Things could take a left turn. When he's back, that's when, at this point, I'll consider it. But Ankalaev is the guy that I'm looking at next at this point.
I'm feeling like it's Ankalaev. I think it's his spot at this point. If Yuri's not back yet. And, man, I don't know who is a better or worse matchup for Jamahal Hill, Ankalaev or Yuri. What do you guys think?
On paper, I would say it's probably Ankalaev.
think so.
But I'll tell you right now, I think Ankalaev would have a more trouble keeping up with Hill's pace if he can't take him down. But Yuri, I think will be able to match that pace, and he'll probably be able to match that pace for 5 rounds if he needs to.
I would be more.
That's really where it becomes a problem.
I'd be more excited to watch Hill versus Prohaska because that would be entertaining as
For sure.
fuck.
I mean, I agree. I 100% agree.
And it feels like it's the unification of a title, kind of.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, that's true.
I also think that fight would end up being extremely violent. I mean, that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Yuri is one of those guys that just flows. He doesn't really have, like you see a lot of guys with set combinations in what they do, and they fire the combination they think is going to work, and then they'll work their way into different other combinations. Yuri is literally just spinning in place and hoping for the best and flowing and making. But to be fair, his feet are always in where they need to be. His footwork is actually really fucking good. I mean, the man does it, but he does it well. Not something you can really like teach everybody how to do, but I mean, he does it really, really well, and it makes him very unique and unorthodox in the way he approaches his striking.
Yeah,
fucking problem.
He creates chaos.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch. It really is. Let's talk about Glover Teixeira, guys. 43 years old. You know, plagued by visa issues. His start in the UFC was delayed several years. He challenged for the title once. He ran into a very young, legendary champion in John Jones. Stuck around, made it back to a title bout, took advantage of it, and beat Jan Blachowicz and got the gold around his waist at the age of like 42. Unreal. Who would like to start?
I will.
You can go first. Yeah.
You kind of just briefly covered the story I wanted to kind of point out, which is you introed it. Which is what Glover kind of had to go through to become champion and the age at which he did it. Like, the guy, he came to America and fought in the WEC in 2006, wrecked 3 dudes, and he was like the next guy. Remember, he was associated with Chuck Liddell at the time, and with Hackelman and the whole crew, and like, he was their guy. They were like, this is the next guy after, obviously, Chuck, who was the man at the time. He was being billed that way. He was delivering on it. Goes back to Brazil, fights a couple more, ends up realizing that he can't come back. So he gets stuck in Brazil for almost 6 years because of visa issues. Doesn't make it back here until 2012 after fighting in the WEC in 2006. So now, instead of being 26 years old, continuing his career, he's 32 by the time he gets back onto the main scene, which for a lot of guys is already kind of moving past the prime. But he races to the top anyway, gets turned back by John Jones, which, happened to a lot of people. And maybe he feels like, fuck, like, I missed my opportunity. I didn't get here soon enough. I could have been champ, whatever. But he keeps going, puts together a new streak, runs into Rumble Johnson, gets knocked out. Wins again.
Also happens.
Right. Wins again. Runs into Alexander Gustafsson. Gets knocked out. Wins again. Runs into Corey Anderson. Gets beat. And at this point, no one, or I should say everyone, figured this guy is not going to be winning any titles. Like, as good as we knew he was, he had just become a guy who was like in the top 10, and he would win and lose, but every time he got a big chance against these real killers at the top, Rumble or Gus or even Corey Anderson, he'd get turned back. And it seemed like, the odds, if there was betting odds on him winning a title, it would have been an absurd number. And instead, after all that, he starts a new streak at what? Fucking
39?
age 39 is when the streak starts, I guess? Yeah.
Yep.
And wins 5 in a row to earn a title shot against Jan, at which point he was, 41 or something, and becomes champion of the fucking world. The oldest champ in the oldest first-time champ, I should say, in UFC history. So it's just an unreal story, this guy's perseverance and ability to push through losses and push through missed opportunities and continue to improve at such an old age, which I can't even tell you how many fighters we can list here who hit like 35 and it's over. Their body's not doing it anymore. Yeah, this guy becomes the champion at 41. So you got to give him his credit, and through it all, he is one of the nicest guys in MMA. In any clip you see of any fighter near him, guys love him, guys respect him, and I am really glad that he got to have a title around his waist before it was all said and done.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when Glover was that sort of myth, the guy that they couldn't get to the U.S., the killer that had been wrecking everybody in Brazil waiting for his UFC shot. And I thought the thing that was interesting is the way they built him up. You would think that he would have gotten a title shot pretty quickly when he got to the UFC, but he had to wreck a few motherfuckers before he got there. And when he did, I mean, John Jones put in work. That was prime John Jones. That was probably the worst time to fight John Jones.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you wonder whether that fight would have gone differently when he came back the first time against OSP and Reyes and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, he kind of had a rough little middle patch there, and then he kind of did his whole Rocky thing, man, and started restraining these. The thing about the run that he had was how fucking good he looked. I mean, he looked really good. Like he had figured it out. Like he had really gotten a handle on his entire game, not just knocking dudes out, but I mean, he really started leaning on his grappling because his grappling is fucking great. He's really good on the ground. So it was nice to see him kind of lean on that a little bit more and not get into these slugfests that, I love Chuck Liddell, but like the striking over there has not necessarily evolved when it comes to the defensive part of things. They still shell up and they get in there and they work, but it just leaves them too exposed, I think. And it was nice to see him exploit other areas that I think he's significantly better at when it comes to not getting his ass kicked. But yeah, man, I mean, I've been a Glover fan. How could you not like the guy? How could you not root for the guy? I don't think I've ever really root against him, against any guy that that he's fought, with the exception of Jamal Hill, I guess. But that was, I don't know. I was rooting for Jamal Hill for longer, I guess, since the beginning, I had my run with Glover for a while that, like, I just didn't think he was going to win. The Gustafsson fight, I thought, man, that one threw me off, especially with how good Gustafsson looked and then how bad he looked right after. Really, really threw me off. But anyway, Glover Teixeira will be missed. I know he'll still be around. He's talking about, coaching Alex Pereira, so he'll still be on the scene, but it's an end of an era for sure.
Yeah, man. I just want to know one thing. Guys from Brazil comes to the United States. Of all the places he could have chosen to settle in the U.S., he chose Danbury, Connecticut. I just want to know why. I want to ask him one day. Be like, why Danbury?
I bet you there's a nice little Brazilian community up there.
Maybe. I feel like we've heard it on like countdown shows before, but I can't remember why. Like, I feel like he has said it before why he ended up in Danbury.
Maybe he just had family there. I don't know. All right, boys, let's move on. Congrats
Hold
to
on,
Jamal.
I want to say real quick.
Yes,
I meant to get to this point.
Do it, baby.
What the fuck are the fans in Rio doing? Like, first of all, maybe it was just me. I felt like they were not loud. Like I feel like they were quiet. Maybe it was the acoustics in the arena. I thought it was going to be way more popping in there. So that was one thing. But I think over 50% of the arena was gone by the time Glover Teixeira got on the fucking microphone.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they didn't want to watch Glover get his ass kicked.
Bro,
I mean,
fuck
after
that.
a certain, it was rough. It was rough.
Fuck that. I'm sorry. If you are Brazilian and there's an aspect to this that I'm not understanding and you want to comment on here, totally open to understanding something that I'm missing right now. But that guy is like a national hero, and you can't even stay there to have him have his moment on the mic where he gets to retire and say thank you to the fans and he gets a round of applause, like, I need a fucking explanation to let that one pass because it pissed me off.
Maybe people thought that they weren't going to interview him, and so when Hill was talking, I mean, they always, if a guy doesn't get finished, they usually interview the loser.
Yeah, man.
Well, when it's I mean, especially we knew he was. I mean, I said it as soon as the fight was over. I was like, is he going to retire? Because I'm pretty sure
I
he's
guess
going
it
to retire.
wasn't certain, but like it was in the cards. Yeah, you knew
It was definitely in the cards. Yeah,
I don't know. It fucking rubbed me wrong. I didn't like it.
It was weird.
I
to
felt
see
like
that place emptied out.
Yeah.
I felt like the Brazilians were extra dickish this past Saturday, just all the way around. I feel like them not having UFC for a few years, I think, just put them on a different level.
Yeah.
And it's been building up, and they went extra crazy on this past card.
The first
Yeah.
UFC in Brazil in 3 years.
Yeah. Speaking of Brazilians, one other point I meant to make when we were talking about Jamahal Hill was that I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they are throwing little teasers out there for the possibility of Alex Pereira fighting Jamahal Hill.
I'll take it. Bye.
I mean, that would be fucking awesome. Like,
Dude, that's one thing that I brought
The
up.
storyline is there.
Yeah,
It's
I
gifted.
forget who I saw write it. It was someone who's like a real name. I forget who it was now, but he was like, "Yeah, I have already been hearing that Pereira doesn't like the weight cut."
Well, of
And it
course
wouldn't
not.
shock me if he
Oh,
feels
shit.
like he has closed the book on Adesanya and doesn't need to do that again. So he's
a
just like,
giant.
fuck it, I would rather fight Jamahal Hill. Doesn't sound crazy.
Pereira is
And-
a giant.
And Izzy would have to go up in weight, I think, at this point to fight Pereira, which seems like a terrible fucking idea considering he didn't even make 200 pounds the last time he went up in weight.
Well, that's because it wasn't a true move. I'm sure he could change his body a bit if he was going up permanently.
Oh, permanently? Yeah, I guess so.
I don't think 205 would be a huge cut for Adesanya, though.
No, yeah,
I don't know.
I agree.
Anyway,
But Hill
but bringing it
Pereira
back
would
to
be
Pereira,
shit.
I think I had said something like along these lines during our preview show of previewing the year. I was like, what if Pereira vacates middleweight, wins lightweight, and then what if he just like takes 6 months
Yeah, that's right, you did.
and just eats steak and creatine and is like a massive heavyweight who just jacks dudes' jaws?
You never know.
Triple champ.
I think his future is certainly at least at light heavyweight. Like, in my head, coming into this year, I thought maybe he'd fight 3-ish more fights at middleweight first. But who friggin' knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
It'll be interesting to see him against a wrestler because I don't think he's actually fought a real wrestler yet.
No, yeah, he certainly hasn't. Definitely not.
Yeah, imagine Pereira against like Ankalaev. That'd be nuts.
And especially if you guys are talking about three-way champ. I mean, you got the fucking Curtis Blades up there. You're going to now apparently have the John Jones. And don't get me wrong, John Jones versus light heavyweight champ Alex Pereira, former middleweight champ Alex Pereira. At that point, that's a fucking... I mean, you can charge $100 for that fucking fight right there.
You guys are skipping some steps here. Like, let's see if he cannot get taken down by Robert Whittaker first before we...
I mean, but this is my point. Is like there's a lot of guys who are problems when it comes to when it comes to the wrestling. There's a lot of guys I think he would have to look out for
Totally.
in the heavier divisions.
Yeah, for sure.